Hello and greetings, it's Lee. Peace be with you. I'm going to be doing a little presentation, as it were, just with some drawings that I've done. And we're going to discuss, well, life, the reality that we're in this place in which we find ourselves, and the things that are happening right now that are coming to a very fine point, a crucible, if you will. And certainly those who are looking for truth, who are finding out that many conspiracies and such are actually true, that there is a war for souls going on, there is also a great process and inevitable outcomes. And this should bring us a lot of great comfort, actually. And not fear and not confusion, but a great comfort and a great inner peace. Because knowing something deeply and having some experiences with things make for the great realization, as opposed to just staying in a mode of belief, as it were. So I would like to do this. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Sometimes that's easy, sometimes not. But let's go. Now then, allow the diagram to sink in for a second, but here's what I want to say. Whether it's drawn like this or not, it doesn't really matter. People can describe it as a sun, as a crystal, as having no real exact form. But the source in which we come from, the source that is the life in us, is one source. And this source allows for all things and is all things. And in it is possessed everything you could possibly think of, because the origin goes back exactly to this. I perhaps should have drawn a full circle, but for the diagram, well, let's just let it sit. When Source wishes to, and is continually doing, exhalations of itself into smaller soul spark life beings, that is you and I, in our very, very core. When we come out, this is called, for my diagram, soul spark belonging to Source God. And this has been called many things. You may call it Atma, you may call it causal self. I'm not sure which names you prefer, but this is exactly what we are in our innermost core. Apart from this, for taking various levels of experience, because within and possessed within this is all the spectrum and the full gamut. So the ability of love, the ability to hate, well, basically anything you could think of, all of our emotions, all of thoughts, all ideas are contained within this soul self that we are, which belongs to this. Now, the only way back to here is complete, full self-realization, enlightenment, call it what you will, and it takes ridiculous amounts of times to go out and then back in. You do not go back in evil, unbalanced, messed up, confused, schizo, this, that, and the other. I'm using that term a bit loosely. This is perfection and balance and full understanding and allowance and ability for all things. But it is not, Source Self is not in itself corrupted, angry, malicious, etc. Try to understand what I'm saying with this. When we come out, we have access and full right to exert free will, but not without, of course, consequences, because actions and reactions exist. We leave in order to relearn what we already know, and we start with the tabula rasa, or clean slate, having everything within, but not being balanced. But we do choose to come out and redo the whole process. Now, you heard of chakras, okay? There's the classic 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Call them what you will. There are also other chakras that are not usually mentioned, having to do with movement of arms, movement of legs. Some people will say 2 for legs. I just put 1 just to make a notification towards movement of that type, and 1 here for movement of that type. Okay, but these, yes, are energy centers. What I've drawn with the thin blue lines is to represent astral body. This is when your causal self is able to take on a form. Here I've drawn a simple humanoid form for simplicity purposes, and since right now you are in a human body, and so am I, that's going to make the most sense for us. And the outer line just represents a physical body. I didn't draw it with being male or female or this or that color. It doesn't matter, because there's no real difference. The fact is what's happening here. Well, I shouldn't say there's no difference. I mean, we have forms of, there's animal forms, there's different forms, but ultimately this knows no color, no shape, no sex, and the astral form takes on and adopts forms and shapes, and then the physical is a manifestation for particular lessons, for particular variety of spice of life, many experiences, and all these things. We do not have one life. Whoever told you and I that we are our body is a lie and is from the devil, which is the darkness that is potentially inside, and that has to do with, well, the negative side, the deadly sins. Whoever tells you that you are immortal and are meant for light, love, knowledge to go back to here is telling you the truth of the positive side. This is the yin-yang, this is the Tao. This is our reality right now. And always can be and always will be. I shouldn't say always can be. Is always going to be, most certainly. Now here I've drawn again the source God. Here is you and I. Soul, Atma, inner being. Positive aspect, the negative aspect, the is self, which is verily from here and cannot be destroyed, cannot be separate entirely, cannot not be that. We are this. Now, when we are focusing on the negative, this is when all the availabilities and the allowances, fear, greed, pride, envy, ignorance, hate or malice, cruelty, sloth, grudge, and unforgiving, etc. And they blend into each other. A lot of them are based on fear and ignorance, and then thus comes with it greed, pride, envy, etc., etc. When this happens, when the soul spark leaves and adopts the negative and is full of fear and confusion, then falling down into lower realms of existence. This is where we end up taking places of quarantine and life lessons and quite literally getting stuck in the mud, because then we end up going into physical life and have to go through many processes in order to start to even begin the desire to recognize the is self. Because yes, while you and I are in this modality, we say, I am my body, I am nothing, I am da-da-da-da, and all these negative things that are not true, but they're a focus of a negative vibration. And the allowance and the ability to go down there is always available by a choice. But when the emotional self and the knowledge starts to grow, and when the person, the entity, is looking towards the positive, then there comes by default the isness that is already there within, and the positive is love and peace, true knowledge and balance, respect, forgiveness, good actions, generosity, etc., etc. And this is based on a confidence and a realization of the self. And it is complete and it is whole and it is balanced and not confused and not angry. But here, when we choose to, with our free will, look at the negative aspects of potential existences, then yes, the falling down. So we are in the physical life because of this very reason, because we do have within us all these things, and we also have within us all these things. But it was fear and ignorance and pride that brought the fall. There is not a single person who is forever lost. And when we realize this, then our real tolerance and understanding for all things, because all these things are accessed, and there is great power in this also. And then the rising, the higher realms of existence. There's more than just one type of heaven. You're not going to sit on a cloud and listen to harps all day long and that's it. Those places do exist, but that's just one such vacation spot or paradise. And those places can be enjoyed for as long as one would wish. But to be there, of course, you will have to be full of this. Those who are here within these negative vibrations of self cannot get into there. The only way to access that is to be that. So think of it even in a scientific wave. You have negative and positive charge. That's why I did it like this, because they cannot blend into each other. Polar opposites, in this case, do not necessarily attract, though we are sharing always within us the potential. And in this physical world that we're in, this is a mix of all types of beings, with various levels of this and various levels of this all commingled together. Now, that doesn't just say it's all spiritual, there's also physical. And now we go to this. When beings are full of fear, pride, and malice, envy, and all these sorts of things, they will, by automatic default, have to take on a low density existence, because that is the end result. It's like mathematics. 2 and 2 is 4. Well, if you are constantly full of this, you are going to fall, and you're going to take on dense bodies, and they're going to be granted and given and even forced. Now, in the center I have drawn Lucifer, the king of the fallen, you might say. This is representing planet Earth. Here you see spaceships and stars and things. I'll explain that quickly in a minute. What I want it to be understood is that this planet is not the only planet. What we souls in these human bodies are going through is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new to source. The same patterns and the same story is taking place in many different planets, even right now. They have in the past, and they will in the future. And that's a guaranteed thing, and that's a fact. It's as simple as that. When an entity charged with these takes on physical bodies, they do so, the physical body is given because that is the level on which they will exist to enact out these things. Many incarnations are necessary to go through all these lessons and to regain balance. The fallen angels are those who left this and went negative, quarantined on one such planet. Within the Earth right now, this Terra, this Gaia, in the center, well, I don't want to say in this, yeah, it's tricky to say it like that, but these represent the veins of the Earth as, if you will, the energy stations and powers, and they also are going to represent tunnels and holes that lead from, well, basically the surface of the planet to within. And quarantined within our planet right now is the king of regression. And for lending our ear, we also have fallen, but not forever and not to such degrees necessarily, because a lot of people, when they first fell and were given physical existence, they said, oops, nope, not for me, big mistake, and immediately started looking for God and started accessing these things. But when full of these, the spirit entities that were in physical bodies, our very ancestors, our own very past, and reincarnation is also very true, when all the negative things were started to be played out, then those who are considered angels and powers and holy beings, and yes, they do have ships and various different things that they do, very different multidimensional modalities in which they exist, within and without, and also their own physical manifestations that are interdimensional. And basically, those that are still very much full of this are very similar to what we call the devil. I've drawn others just to represent archdevils, if you will, or those that serve very close. Many of these are the fallen spirits of Grey, ET, EBE entities, Dracos, etc. Okay? All following this. They would like to gain powers and things while still being full of this. And the trick's on them, because insofar as they desire and focus on those things, they will always get back stuck in the muck again and again, because energy bodies have to be fully accessed within these in order to rise, in order to be even aware of higher realms. As long as your focus is on this, your energy body cannot morph, as it were, into higher awarenesses and higher realms of existence. Now, all the people on the earth, you and me and everybody, all colors, all countries, all cultures, though these are a nice variety of spice of life, etc., but ultimately we are the same perfectly, and exactly. Those who align with this because they want power, they want control over others, they want to feel special over somebody else. Someone that's full of light, love, and knowledge, all these things and more, do not have envy and a need to compete and I'm better than you. Everybody realizes we are the same, we are essentially one, and it's realized and we rise. Those who are competitive and angry and pride, full of pride and greed and fearful, the devils are fearful and proud. That is the main thing to remember. Those human beings who align with them are still very much attached to the negative vibrations of existence. This world has been called the devil's playground. This earth itself can be considered a hell. There can be worse hells and levels of things within the various substructures. But those that serve the darkness serve rather this. And yes, there are very many secret cults. There are governments and kingdoms going back in history, and even now and even tomorrow, all over the world, who are still going to follow this. Eventually, they will grow up. That's the best way to put it. Become mature and leave that. And say, maybe I'm more than this. Maybe I'm tired of repeating these cycles. Oh wait, maybe I am that. Oh wait, maybe I feel better when I am positive. Angels are physical and non-physical. Demons are physical and non-physical. These are just very simple names I'm going to use for this presentation, because semantics is a different thing. You can always check out my book, and I'll put a link in the description to my book, which goes over this in a brief way, but a little bit better. Now, many beings exist who serve light, who are physical and non-physical, and they watch this place. They are called watchers. They have been called angels. They've been called many things. Now we call them extraterrestrials or extraterrestrial biological entities, meaning they are not bound to terra, extra of terra, right? So, basically, those who are very dark and very rebellious cannot leave. They will try. They have mind-controlled many beings. They try their best to keep people locked down here, so that we don't remember this, so that we don't go to this, and thus remain chained with them. See, the devil is basically a kamikaze pilot, and anyone could be a big devil. The point is, Lucifer would be considered one such one to have fallen very far and very deep, and his grudge is very big. And if he wanted to forgive himself and let go, that process could happen. But that will be up to him, as it were. But it's not to say, oh, all the world's problems are blamed on some dark beings that exist. If we chose to align and agree with it, then that's why we're here in these physical bodies. But it's not to be afraid, because there is nobody stuck. There are many lifetimes. Those who believe in love and light and the real God will indeed return. Guaranteed facts. You don't believe me? Just wait. Your future is already coming. We already are in the is and in the now. And the modalities that we find our bodies in, well, things change. There is a flux, and there will be this for anyone who wants it, and there will be this for anyone who wants it. But don't cry and complain that bad things happen, and then all of a sudden we're in a physical body and we start saying, oh. Well, to complain is to say, maybe that's not exactly the best. Maybe I should stop being like this and start going here, right? The dragon representing anger, fear, wrath, pride, all these things that we mentioned. Here, the monkey to represent the curious nature that wants to explore and to experience. Some people could not care at all about listening to higher spirituality and leaving the planet and all sorts of things. They're not ready. They still have much to experience, knowledge to gain, and things to remember before they go back to the source. This represents not just the soul in the animal bodies, but humans as well, and this and that. And here I have the little pudgy little Buddha representing somebody happy, full, content, possessing all these good things. And this being heads towards enlightenment. Remembers, well, his, her, it's, what do we call it? It's not sexual. Remembers his, her, it's prime nature. So what I recommend to people is to find your nowness in the isness. You are of this. You belong to Source. If you stay, and if I stay in the negative, then we keep repeating the fallen down cycles, physical existences, many lifetimes. In and out of the body, we'll be miserable ghosts until we come back in a body. We'll be different energies. But when we decide to go to light and let go, then we've made that choice. Recognition starts. These things are gained greatly and are empowered. And up we go. This is what this planet is. This is why you and I are here. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. We are all entitled to the exact same thing, which is extreme peace and happiness and full knowledge. Now, we don't go from a physical life right to a perfect heaven. There are more stages. There are many different levels of heaven. The final heaven is fully back into merging with the divine Godhead. But the journey's not over with one life. We have many, many better things after this physical planet. There are some amazing things ahead. That's a guaranteed fact. Hope you enjoyed the video. Much love and light to you. Check out my book if you're interested. Check out my other videos if you're interested. And whomever else. There's so many people that are working for the light and saying the same things, and who are at least trying to. And I am someone that is just one little spark of consciousness, trying to remember where I came from, what I am, and sharing it along with you. It's been quite the journey. Life is good. Let's move up. Peace.